You have accessed the podcast of OA, located deep within Sector 14845 and powered by the Emerald Light of Will. The podcast of OA is your guide to the Green Lantern universe. Hosted by Lanterns Myron Rumsey and Bill Giancoli, the podcast of OA begins now.
Welcome back to the podcast of OA. This is episode 104. I'm Bill Giancoli, and I'm joined as always with Myron Rumsey, the creator and the genesis, I think I've used that word before, genesis of the blog of OA and the podcast of OA. How are you doing tonight, Myron?
I am doing great, Bill. San Diego Comic-Con just ended today, so, we've got some news and things that came out of San Diego. Not a whole lot of Green Lantern stuff, but we've got a little bit of news we're going to talk about with that. And then this episode, we're going to do a little bit of catch-up. Our interview with Robert Venditti put us a little out of schedule. So this episode, episode 104, is going to cover the final issue of Edge of Oblivion. I can't believe we haven't talked about it yet. And then we're going to talk about the first three issues of the new Green Lanterns series.
This is Robert Venditti, and you're listening to the podcast of OA.
Now, yeah, San Diego Comic-Con, Myron, it turned out to be not as huge on the Green Lantern scale, but there was a lot of news in general for good comic fans.
Yeah, there was, and there were a few things Green Lantern related. They released at San Diego Comic-Con, they showed a teaser trailer, or sizzle reel, I guess is probably the better term, for the new animated Justice League action show, and that didn't feature Green Lantern, but it did show Dexter and Bleez. And we already know, because of an exclusive that we got at the blog of OA, that Atrocitus and Zelia Zox are there, and that Josh Keaton is back as Hal Jordan. What was saw behind the scenes at the show was the display booth for Justice League Action had pictures of a number of characters, and there was a picture of Hal in amongst all the characters that were there. So we do know he's there. The uniform is a little bit different. I mean, it still has the classic Green Lantern look, but the point that's in the chest that usually comes down to about the mid-waist area doesn't go that far. It only goes as far as the logo. Still looks great, though. The sizzle reel makes it look like it's going to be very much like Beware the Batman. Or, excuse me, not Beware the Batman, but Batman Brave and the Bold. I don't know if, Bill, did you ever watch that at all?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a little bit lighter, much more action-y, probably a little bit more humor than we're used to. It's not going to be in the vein of the Justice League cartoon that we saw before that was on Cartoon Network. It was much more serious and overarching plots. This is going to be 11-minute episodes, quick adventures, and with a lot of action. What I saw today was that there was going to be, I think they said, 40 to 60 heroes, and another 40 to 60 villains. So you're looking at a cast of well over 100 characters by the time you get done. So big cast. It looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. People seem to be excited by it. The other thing that was announced was IDW announced a sequel to the Green Lantern Star Trek crossover that came out last year. And Mike Johnson, who was the writer, he appeared on the blog, the podcast of OA, I think it was episode 91. He's writing the book once again. He's already said he wants to come back on the show to talk about it, which is great. Obviously, we want to do that when it gets closer to coming out this fall. I believe the timeline is winter of this year, probably December, I think they said, or November. But that's really exciting. And there really wasn't any news. I think we were all hoping for some casting news when Warner Brothers had their panel on Saturday to talk about Justice League, and they did show some. I hesitate to call it a teaser trailer, but they showed some footage from Justice League. Obviously, no Green Lantern in there whatsoever. We'd all be talking about it right now, unfortunately, there wasn't any casting announcements. I was really, really hoping that when they brought the Justice League out, that was going to be a surprise in Hall H, is that they were going to bring out the characters we already knew, and then somebody else was going to show up and be Hal or John or whatever they were going to do. That's really what I was hoping would happen. It didn't, unfortunately, so I guess we've got to wait a little while longer. And then the only last bit of news coming out of San Diego was in the merchandising section. There were, in the DC Collectibles booth area, some new figures. One of them is an Icons version of Sinestro, complete with some different construct attachments. Then they're re-releasing the Hal Jordan one. They did a deluxe Green Lantern figure of Hal this year. and it had a suit of armor. It was like a construct armor you could stick on the character, and it looked really kind of cool. They're re-releasing that figure without the armor, and I believe it's part of a Justice League set, from what I understand. And then they also showed, but they did not allow pictures of, a Jessica Cruz action figure. So there will be a Jessica figure coming, I believe it's November of next year. But that's kind of all there is coming out of San Diego. I was really, like I said, and I think of the hearts and minds of Green Lantern fans everywhere were suddenly disappointed when there was nothing there. But we'll get it in due time. I just hope it's sooner rather than later. And then we do have one other piece of news that has nothing to do with San Diego Comic-Con, but the podcast of OA is now on iHeartRadio. So another outlet for people to find us.
Yes, so check us out. I don't think there's any way you can not find us right now.
I think Spotify is the only way you can't find us, and that's coming. We're waiting for Spotify to finalize things with the company that we host the podcast with. But that partnership has already been announced. It's just there's a scheduling timeline of when it's going to happen. We've already registered for it. So we're just waiting for them to say, hey, we now have Spotify available as a destination source to publish your episodes, and then we will be there too. So we've hit, I think, pretty much every major way to get to a podcast. So if you can't find us, you're not looking very hard.
Yeah, really. Or you've been inundated with a bunch of Overeaters Anonymous podcasts.
That was a problem early on. After we named the podcast of O, I was like, you go and you search on it, and all you find is Overeaters Anonymous. But I think now that we've got enough episodes out there, that problem's been resolved. But if you go and search for Green Lantern on iTunes or wherever you go, you'll find us. So, and obviously, if you're listening to this right now, you've already found us.
Right. Excellent.
This is Razor, and you are listening to the blog of Oa. You need to keep listening. Otherwise, I will track you down with all of my skill, and you will feel my wrath.
So, Bill, it's shocking that we have not yet talked about the conclusion to Green Lantern Corps Edge of Oblivion. The issue came out, I think it was 2 months ago, and it kind of slipped off the radar with all the Rebirth stuff going on. But the Green Lantern Corps has their final stand against the Blackest Knights. The issue that brings the whole series to a conclusion. What did you think about it? Did you find this to be a satisfactory conclusion to the story?
I think this story as a standalone, yes. I think it was, I like that, we're going to go fighting into the good night, we're going to just go into this Oblivion all together and we're going to go down swinging. That's a great, mantra for the Green Lantern Corps and everything like that. I think where it just leaves so many questions open that it was like an incomplete story. And I think that's where it kind of drops off. But I could see reading Edge of Oblivion as like a trade and just having it taken out of the main timeline a little bit. Kind of like, if you will, Emerald Knights, that animated film.
Right.
It kind of acts on its own.
Mm-hmm. Did I know for me, I enjoyed the conclusion, but I almost felt like there wasn't an ending. They go off into the void, and that was okay, but I think it didn't leave the characters in a good position. I think one of the differences between the Green Lantern's book and Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps is that Sam Humphries has kind of the luxury of there are no pieces they have to pick up. He can just start creating and go. And Robert Venditti with the Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps book has to not only wrap up what's going on with Hal, but then how do the Corps get back? We see them enter the void. Do they just magically pop up? How do they get back? And so I think Robert Venditti is going to have to spend a few issues of that series kind of getting the pieces realigned so he can start telling his story before he can actually move forward. And I don't know if that's a hindrance or it's a challenge that he enjoys. And when he and I talked in the last episode of the podcast, we did an interview with him. He didn't really get into it too much, and I think he's just taking it in stride and is going forward. But I kind of felt like, if I'm reading this as a story, I don't know where they are. It's kind of cool that it doesn't end with a nice, clean bow on it. But at the same time, it was a little, I don't know. If I were a reader, I'd be looking for where's the ending in it. And knowing that this is a continuation of a story, they had Krona and Relic in it, we never find out what happens to them.
Well, and I think that's where if we went back years, or they just take this and they turn it into a trade, you may want to drop some of that story, or throw an extra page in there or something. But as its own separate story, years from now, we know they're okay. And you're just like, again, I think it's more of the tale of the mantra of the Green Lantern Corps. We're sticking together on the edge of everything going to, that could be the finale, could be something else, you don't know, but we're fighting all the way through it. And I like that. I like that part of it. I just, like you, I think at this time and where we're at with Rebirth and all these things that are happening with the Green Lantern, it just feels like we're getting cut off here.
Yeah. I think if I were reading it out of context, I'd feel differently about it than when I'm trying to read it in. And to me, it really underscores some of the problems I have with the Green Lantern continuity right now, because the Green Lantern showed up in Justice League number 59, 49, 50, and Jessica Cruz gets her ring, and Simon Baz is there. But now we're back to Green Lanterns, and the Green Lanterns are gone. And we know that Simon Baz is with them because he's right here on the page. And how do you parse that? That to me is really there's no way to undo that knot, which is part of the problem. And then the other problem is, for me, is Simon in this series doesn't have his gun on. So he's already gone past the point of needing the gun, but we're going back to the Green Lantern's book, and he suddenly is all about having the gun again. And to me, it shows a de-evolution of the character. And when we start talking about Green Lanterns, I'll unleash a little bit more about Simon Baz over there. But I just think that for that character, DC's not doing him any favors, because they've evolved him to a point, and now we're supposed to expect him to be someone who's brand new again. And here we see a Simon Baz who's very courageous, and he's not, quite bluntly, he's not a jerk. And he plunges headlong into the void to make sure things are okay for the Green Lanterns. And okay, let's assume for a minute that he gets back before the rest of the Green Lanterns do. That explains why he's back and the rest of them aren't. But don't you think he would have told Hal or somebody that, hey, by the way, the Green Lantern Corps, they're in the universe before ours. That's where they're stuck.
Or memory was wiped and he's back in the,
well, yeah, I guess you could go that route.
We could mess with time. I think it is a matter of when we're reading it, it's the time of like where we're changing characters, we're dropping books, we're adding new characters, and it comes at just a time where I think, again, years from now, we could go back and read this and kind of really enjoy it for what it is. And speaking of continuity, is there any real long-lasting effects other than maybe Corona?
Corona.
And Relic there. Other than those two, are there any real lasting effects, like anybody getting really damaged to a point where are we going to see this continuity later on?
Muck Muck is dead.
Oh yeah, that's right. They dried him out.
Yeah.
Okay, but Muck didn't he die when he was a Durland?
No, he died here. He died when they got on this planet.
I keep thinking of dead fish everywhere, but the but I guess kind of okay. So Muck Muck's dead. I think that's a hit we can forget. That will be a Green Lantern trivia question in like podcast episode number 274 or something like that. Yeah. The last appearance of Muck Muck was in what issue? So with that being said, I just don't think there's any real significant ripple effects of the continuity with this Edge of Oblivion that we will notice, other than maybe some questions, but I don't think we're going to notice anything for a few years.
Yeah. Corona, who knows, him and Relic, they're scientists. They could have figured a way out that we just don't know about, so I'm not so concerned about that because, again, those characters don't really apply to this story. I'm having a hard time in my head, in the headcanon, trying to figure out how all these pieces go together. And I guess maybe the best thing to do is to not to try to do that, because all this is
you're thinking too much.
Yeah, it's giving me a headache, But it was interesting, like you said, their final stand and beating the Blackest Knights. It was very much a hoorah ending.
Yes, very much so.
So yeah, I enjoyed it by and large.
This is Salak, Green Lantern of Sector 1418, and you are receiving the podcast of Oa.
The podcast of Oa.
So, Bill, we're going to talk about all the first three issues of Green Lanterns, and I think you and I are going to have differing opinions.
I think so. I think to a degree. Yeah, I wouldn't say there's stark contrast, but
no. So, we've got the Red Lanterns coming to Earth and trying to turn Earth into their new home, and they are working on building a Hell Tower. And you've got Simon Baz and Jessica Cruz, who don't really want to be partners, don't get along, and you've got conflicting. They've got their inner monologues to say one thing, and their external dialogue, which sometimes says another. Sometimes it's not exactly getting along very well. And, we see Bleeze come along, and like I said, we're going to talk about all three issues at once. So give me your overall opinion.
My overall opinion was I wasn't as... It's weird. I have to gauge my opinion based on your opinion, which is I wasn't as upset about it as Myron. Yeah, I'm like, no, but I would say I was middle of the road. I thought it was a good... I like the idea of two new Green Lanterns figuring out the ring, kind of an interesting partnership. It felt fresh to me. Like I didn't feel like it was stepping on any toes or anything. I thought it was really good about. It was just an interesting take that I personally haven't seen with the Green Lanterns, or I personally experienced with my time reading the Green Lanterns. So, and that's where yours may differ. So I thought it was okay. I have a lot of questions about Jessica Cruz as a character, and maybe that is just where I'm interested, is that I do have questions because her character is kind of odd. In that it's interesting. I think I see the motivation of almost writing a character who's dealing with mental anxiety, which a lot of people deal with, and I can't tell if it's kind of utilizing that angle where you now have this superhero who deals with like a kind of a mental illness, like, and I shouldn't say mental illness, but you know what I mean, an affliction that they deal with. And it kind of like I don't know, is it the Sentry in Marvel Comics?
I am not sure.
So the bottom line is like, she's having these anxiety things that like, how does she get this ring? Now you read the others where it's the Power Ring, right?
Yeah, where she was Power Ring, correct.
She was Power Ring. And so this seems like a straight on Green Lantern ring. And it seems odd that she's so naive with it. And my questions with Baz is that he's being treated like a rookie. He's doing things that you would think at this point in the things he's seen, he would be more of a mentor towards Jessica.
Right. Well, he was never this snotty towards anybody. And when you look at his character development prior to this series, he was very much a calming influence. I mean, he's probably the one Green Lantern that got along with Guy Gardner, for crying out loud.
Right. I mean, I could see where he was kind of had that fight mentality. And that's probably why he got along with Guy Gardner. But he comes off a little bit more like the older brother in Wonder Years.
Okay, yeah.
Immature in some regards.
Right.
It's
just not the way I've read him before, at least the way I interpreted the character before. So I find him to be written completely out of character.
Well, that's what I mean. I don't remember him. You would think, and even just at this point, even if this is how he started off, and we're trying to, he's seen a lot of Again, it's Rebirth, so we don't know exactly where they're starting. But yes, he seems different than what we've come to know him as. And Jessica Cruz, my theory on her is that there's an insecurity, especially for the ages that generally read comics, and the up and coming. You and I see this at a lot of conventions now. Women are like the fastest growing consumers of comics and video games and things of that, and you're seeing more and more of them, females enjoying comics. And there's part of me that's wondering, and I'm not saying this was a direct, somebody was sitting there and like, ha 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 ha, let's get more female readers, but there is that influence.
But that is probably exactly what happened. But okay.
But I don't think the evil laugh was there.
Not at all.
But on top of that, it almost seems like it's putting women back a little bit in making this very inexperienced, anxiety-filled, which Jessica Cruz is probably in her mid-20s, something like that.
Probably.
But acting like a 13-year-old.
Yeah. I struggle with you were 4 issues in and she hasn't made a construct yet, and I know that Humphreys is probably building this to that when this happens, it's going to be an amazing thing. This is going to be a breakthrough moment. And I'm sure in the back of my head what's going on is that, the sister's going to be in serious trouble, and if Jessica doesn't do something, her sister's going to die, and that's when she's going to finally rise to the occasion. But I totally don't get into the character, and I can see having 2 new Green Lanterns, but do we need 2 more Earth Green Lanterns? Do we need to de-evolve Simon Baz to do this? I think, part of the problem I run into is I welcome diverse readers to come into the Green Lantern universe, but there are already so many diverse characters. There are plenty of female characters. If you need to have a female character to relate to, there are already plenty of strong female characters. Did we need to muddy the waters even more?
Well, that's just it. I don't find her a strong
no, I don't either
character, and I think that's the issue. Like, you want to see her rise, and I guess. Well, and this is where I have to maybe step out of being a male, right? Mm-hmm. Nobody questions, like, the Spider-Man who started out weak and with anxiety and then rises to the occasion and becomes a strong character.
Right. But eventually there's a problem, and the Spider-Man had the exact same problem.
Right.
At some point, that has to stop. And at some point, Kyle Rayner had the same problem. He was the rookie Green Lantern, and at some point, he can't be the rookie Green Lantern anymore. He has to be just like everybody else, otherwise he doesn't grow over his arc. And then what happens when you get there? If that's your formula for success, at some point, you're not going to be able to rely on that anymore. And I think that's where we've gotten to the point where we've gotten so many characters now. We're up to, 6 or 7 Earth Lanterns?
I can't argue with the saturation part of it.
Yeah.
But I think they did try to do, and here's the thing, you and I, we both know there are so many other more decisions. They could have had like 15 different types of Green Lanterns that they were going to look at to be like somewhere doing something new, and they, like you said, they probably looked at it and they were like, female, that would be awesome. Let's see if we can get female readers in on this, right?
Sure.
I just question, she's just not that intriguing of a character.
I would be more interested in reading about Aricia trying to live up to her father's legacy, or Sornik Natu, who I think is a very interesting character. And
strong.
Yeah, I'd rather read about those characters than this one, quite frankly.
And that's where I'm like, I get it. If we can look at, like, I'm not gonna write her off yet, because there's part of me that feels there is a purposely, they're making her seem a lot weaker than maybe what she's going to turn out to be.
Well, yeah, I'm sure it's going to be that big moment. And at some point, the reason why the Baz is being written so out of character is to elevate your appreciation of her and to rally behind her. That's the whole point of the book. That's the only reason why it exists, at least in my mind.
So you're saying that Baz he's more of a vehicle now for her?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, because
I just want to be clear.
Yeah.
With the hate mail. No.
I honestly don't think that they're treating Baz like the character he deserves to be. I'm not a Baz fan. I never have been. I don't besmirch people that like the character, but I feel bad for the people that have loved that character and rallied behind him all the way up till now, only to get to this book and see him written so out of character and like such an idiot and a jerk. And then DC goes out of the way to, in the second issue, was it the second issue we had Emerald Sight, or was it the first issue? I can't remember which now it was. But you had the Emerald Sight thing in one issue, and then you had, the newest issue, he heals Bleeze and removes her ability to be a Red Lantern. Now, granted, it's only for a short period of time, but that's something that's supposed to be for the Blue Lanterns. That kind of disregards the continuity thing. Yeah, I know he healed his brother-in-law, well, not his brother-in-law, but his friend, helped bring him out of a coma. That, to me, that's different than taking somebody whose blood has been replaced by a Red Lantern power battery and brings them back to normalcy, even for 5 minutes. Now, I thought in this third issue, when he did that with Bleeze, to me that was the best part of the entire series so far, were those interactions. And it wasn't because of Simon necessarily, although I liked the way that he dealt with her, but Bleeze's character and what it did with her character. But even the schizophrenia with Baz in the third issue, he starts out being the jerk to Jessica, then he has this very moment where he can empathize with Bleeze, and then he goes right back to being a jerk with Jessica again.
Yeah, well, I think, there's part of it that's trying to get that brother-sister kind of feel to it. And I mean, again, it's one of those you buy it or you don't buy it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I'm not buying it.
I think the reason why I am a little softer on this, and I guess just if we're going to quantify it, you gave it what, one lantern? If you gave these 3 books all together, what would the average be? One lantern?
2. I gave all 3 of them 2 out of 5.
2 out of 5. Okay, so I would probably be about 3 out of 5. For all of them,
I part of the problem I had with Baz was not only his problem with Jessica, but like the whole thing was he's in one of the issues. Issue number 2, he's like, "I'm Simon Baz. Being a Green Lantern is awesome. Green Lanterns do awesome stuff." I'm like, and then the first issue when he's doing the oath and he's like, blah 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 blah, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, that was, well,
come on.
I don't know if they're trying to make him like a badass with the heart of gold, or
I think they're trying to make him a badass without the bad.
I like them more as the quiet badass, a completely almost closer to Jon Stewart than what he is now. He just seems so immature and brash, which is funny because, like you said, with Bleeze, he wasn't. But Bleeze, Bleeze is kind of a hottie. And Jess is like your sister, so it's,
Yeah.
So basically, what we're seeing from here is that you are not a fan right now.
To sum it up, I would agree with that statement. Yeah, I'm not a fan. I'm not digging it.
Okay. So, but do you think you could come around if Jessica's transformation into a much stronger, female character?
Sam Humphries would have to pull some miracle out of his butt.
All right. Because right now, I think if something does come around, I could say, okay, she had humble beginnings, and but it's very odd that they chose like the anxiety, can't leave the apartment kind of thing.
Yeah.
Especially now that we're now, it's becoming a discussion, much more popular discussion, talking about that treating people who have deal with more emotional and mental afflictions is like a real thing. So I think that's interesting too. I just don't know if it works on a character that's based slowly on with emotionals and will, and I can see where they're trying to go with the twist there. I just don't know if it's going to work, and I feel it's a big gamble, but I'm willing to see what the odds are, and see what happens.
And artistically, it's not a bad looking book. The third issue, not as good as the other two in terms of the art. The third issue had way too many artists, and I'm hoping that was just that, Rob Roca had a reason why he, for this issue he couldn't do it on his own, because I think there were 3 different art teams, and there were mistakes throughout. I mean, you had Bleez 1 second wearing one outfit and the next second wearing another one. You had Simon Baz in the scene where he pulls his gun out to check it. You can see the holster on his left leg, but then the same artist in the next panel has him have the gun in the right hand, and then it's not even a metallic gun, it's a construct gun.
Right, and I don't know, but Atrocitus in this last issue looked awful.
Yeah. Most of this third issue did not. The cover art was great. The interior art, not so good. Some of it, now the stuff that Robson Roca did, I thought was good, but the rest of it, not so much.
Yeah, I was not again, it's good.
Yeah.
It's just not like the Atrocitus was. It just wasn't paid. There wasn't enough attention paid to it.
Yeah, and I just think from a narrative sense, there's something about this story that I think could be much more powerful if we were talking about rage in this country, and I think that Sam Humphries is kind of missing a golden opportunity. There was a scene in this third issue where Atrocitus and Dexter and Bleez and stuff encounter with the farmer and his grandson. And they never talk about why the farmer and the grandson are angry. And I keep thinking, there's a reason why Atrocitus is coming to Earth, and it's because he senses so much rage. But why aren't we talking about the rage? And to me, that would be a much more socially interesting story than Jessica Cruz's social anxiety.
And well, it's Atrocitus is becoming kind of a farce within himself, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
He hangs around with a cat. That's his number one man, and he gets so angry, and the way he's presented. Yet I've never seen somebody take so many butt kickings, and it's becoming like Gargamel in Smurfs. And, I hate to say that, but Red Lanterns were much more interesting when he was out of the picture.
Now his hatred of the Guardians really makes sense.
Yeah, really, exactly. Doesn't it? I think that's where they got him. They were like, we need a guy. Let's draw a really scary-looking Gargamel. But honestly, if you think about it, the Red Lanterns were much more interesting with Guy Gardner. Bleez was much more interesting. Everyone was much more interesting. The thought of rage was much more interesting. And now we're going back into this, I'm Atrocitus, thank goodness everyone else has been beaten.
Well, and we kind of saw him, he doesn't have a reason to be angry anymore.
It's just an odd start to this.
Yeah.
I would have much rathered some just random alien invasion and them having to deal with it and learning the rings and make them the focus. But now you're pulling away to bring these 2 characters in who really have no business here.
I would much rather have seen Green Lanterns with Hal and Jessica, and John Stewart in the Green Lantern Corps is the second book, quite frankly. But that's just me.
So, okay, you can have one partner, Jessica Cruz or Baz.
I would take Jessica Cruz because Baz I'd have to probably kill the way he's acting, and at least Jessica, I could try to talk her up a little bit to help her.
It's like, come on, Jessica, come on.
Come on, yeah.
Well,
I'd feel bad throwing Jessica out with the Green Lantern Corps because she's not been trained yet. And that's the inability to make a construct thing just is really gnawing at me, and I know that from a writing standpoint, he's thinking this is a great idea. She can't make a construct, and in a moment of drama, she's going to suddenly be able to do it, and the light's going to come on, and she's going to save the day by making a construct. And then all I see all the online commentary is going to be like, oh, she did it. I was so, I was rallying behind her, and she did it. And that's what it's building to. It's unfortunately that transparent.
It's going to be awful though. If it's like a moment, the moment's coming. You're reading it. You're waiting for that big moment of this awesome construct. And it's just like a huge fly swatter. It's like it saves the day, but then you're like, all right. It just isn't as creative as you would like it.
Yeah.
But overall, I think I'm sticking with it. I think you're sticking with it as well.
Well, I'm only sticking with it because I needed to review for the website.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of your thing, but I'm giving it a chance. I think the concept in general of 2 new lanterns getting out there, seeing what they can become is kind of cool. I just question if I'm buying the actual characters, and you just seem pretty irked that they're just not there yet, and they're kind of throwing a lot of other Green Lantern staples out the door.
Well, yeah, there's some ignorance of things which bothers me greatly, quite frankly, because you have people that you're bringing in, you're attracting new readers, which is great, but then you're not telling them about the whole mythology. You're not really ingraining them in any way or helping educate them about it, and they're going to think that these things are normal, and they're not. And I'll be honest, it takes me. I think this is as much of a test of my willpower to read than it is for Jessica to build a construct. But there are people out there that like it. I'm not saying if you like it, there's something wrong with you. It's clearly not my cup of tea, and
you're clearly insane.
Yes, I'm clearly insane at this point. But I kind of troll some of the message boards, not troll in the term of leaving bad comments and things, but I kind of ghost them. I don't know what lurk them is probably the best term. And people are kind of mixed. So, who knows how this book will do. My concern is if this book fails, then what are they going to do with the characters? And my question, one of the questions I wanted to ask you, Bill, is you've got this new Guardian that shows up with this new ring. My question to you is who gets that ring? Simon, Jessica, or Kyle?
Well, they're kind of it seems like they're leaning towards something special with Simon.
Well, yeah, he's turning into quite the special snowflake.
He certainly is. I mean, the fact he can heal people, he can then also have the sight, and then he can cure Red Lanterns. So, I mean, it almost seems like more hope. It was more of a hope thing with the Red Lantern than anything, but I don't know. I would say Baz, but
yeah, I don't know. I don't know whether it's gonna be Jessica or Baz, or we know that Kyle's coming back at some point to do something only he can do, and they talked about the next evolution of Kyle Rayner at San Diego when people asked about why Kyle wasn't in some of the artwork for Rebirth, and so is this ring destined for Kyle, and he's no longer going to be a white lantern, he's going to be a multicolored lantern. I don't know what this ring is going to do. To me, if anything, that's the only intriguing part of this series for me, is I want to know what the hell the ring is.
Right, exactly.
I want to know that part of it, and I know people are going to be like, you're an idiot, but I'm actually rooting for the Red Lanterns right now.
The Myron rage is strong. He's been infected with the rage. Well, we'll just have to see, I guess, is the bottom line there.
Yeah, we'll have to see how long it goes and how long I can hold on.
Yeah, exactly.
This is Van Jensen, and you're listening to the podcast of OA.
So, Myron, I have a Kilowog challenge for you.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and it's kind of summer themed, if you will. But I want you to get creative with this.
Okay, right? So the challenge is I have a gun with one bullet, and I've got Jessica Cruz and Simon Baz. Which one do I use it on, right?
Yeah.
No,
exactly. Okay. way to turn my lighthearted Kilowog challenge dark and morbid. But actually, Kilowog challenge this hot summer is so the temperatures reach a very humid 110 degrees. Oh, an ice cream truck, local ice cream truck going around your neighborhood is going, and all of a sudden their AC is out. Kids are all coming out. They're cranky and they want ice cream. What do you do?
Well, if I could summon the will to actually make a construct, I would I would probably make a giant igloo that not only covered the truck but the area around it, so that the kids could step into the igloo and cool off while they were getting their ice cream.
Oh, I like the igloo. Okay, very cool. I was going to have a polar bear chase the kids away. No, I like that, and I think that's a great Kilowog challenge. If you would like to answer the Kilowog challenge, again, temperatures are reaching a very humid 110 degrees. Your local ice cream truck AC breaks down and kids are cranky and they want ice cream, what would you do with your power ring? You can send your emails to your cue, Myron.
Send your response to greenlantern@stny.rr.com, or you can call the show's voice line. And the show's voice line is 1-406-POD-OA. That's 406-763-6362. And remember, it only records for about 30 seconds or so before Google Voice cuts you off.
This is Razor, and you are listening to the blog of Oa. You need to keep listening, otherwise I will track you down with all of my skill, and you will feel my wrath.
So, Bill, that wraps up another episode of the Podcast of Oa, episode 104. So we'll be back again soon to talk about Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps. And, we've got some interviews coming down the road. Like we said, Mike Johnson wants to come on and talk about the new Star Trek Green Lantern book. And Robert Venditti wants to come back on again. We were going to actually record an interview for this episode to talk about issue 1 of Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps. But with the San Diego Comic-Con, he was flying out to West Coast, and schedules just didn't work out. So we're hoping to have Rob on again soon. I really enjoyed the conversation I had with him here a couple weeks ago.
So thank you again for listening and keeping up with the Podcast of Oa. You can check us out on Facebook, so please like our page. Send all your friends there as well. And now we can be heard on iHeartRadio. That's correct, Myron?
Yep.
And anywhere else you can find a good Podcast of Oa.
Wherever,
so again, thank you for listening.
Wherever other podcasts are sold.
Yeah, right.
But until next time, everybody, as always, keep your power rings charged, take care of each other, and make every day your brightest day. Thanks. The Podcast of Oa is the official podcast of the blog of Oa and a proud member of the Comics Podcast Network. Share your comments and questions by calling the show's voicemail line at 406-POD-OA. That's 406-763-6362. And Skype users can leave a voicemail on the show's account, Blog of Oa. Emails can be sent to greenlantern@stny.rr.com. And you can also find the Blog of Oa and the Podcast of Oa on Facebook and Google+. Green Lantern and other related characters are the copyrighted property of DC Comics Incorporated and are used without permission. The Blog of Oa and the Podcast of Oa are fan productions and do not claim any ownership over the Green Lantern or any other copyrighted properties.